Wow. Hey, Banker Nation, this is your host, Michael Nguyen from the Banker Success Podcast, where I interview experts to help your banks and credit union grow and prosper. So let's get started. I'm so thrilled to introduce my guest today, Mr. Bobby Martin. He is Bobby is CEO of Vertical IQ, an author, and today he will share with you a very interesting topic.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Michael. Mm-mm. Oh, hey.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the screen went blank for a second, so I missed your question. I apologize.
No problem.
You're back.
So I just given our listener just an overview about you. So can you maybe take a minute and share with the audience just a little bit about you and your company?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Bobby Martin. As you've stated, I am here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I grew up here in Raleigh. And I was a banker in the 1990s. So I was a calling officer, and I used to call on all sorts of different businesses. And I had the idea through being a banker that the more you know about a business or industry, the better my sales meetings would go. And I was slowly but surely figured out that is a secret formula for me. That if I really learned about what they cared about and incorporated that content and ideas into my presentations to them, that it was a huge differentiator. So I had the idea to start a company, and today in 2019, we have a company called Vertical IQ that provides industry research to those who care about relationships with small business owners, mainly bankers. So that's my big picture story.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we get started into the meat of the interview today, just to keep the motivational ball rolling. So Bobby, do you have any success quote that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, good question. I admired my Uncle Brian Carey a lot, a really smart man who had really high up positions at various corporations and at the Federal Reserve, actually. But he was in a big meeting with the top people at Northern Telecom back in the day. And the salespeople weren't doing what the executives wanted them to do. They were all upset at them, pointing fingers, and it was just intense. And my Uncle Brian said to them, yeah, how dare those salespeople do what we incent them to do? And you realize that not just salespeople, but people in general, the small business owners or people you work with, they are incentivized a certain way. And if you ignore incentive, you don't think about incentive, then you're doing yourself a disfavor. So that was one of the quotes that just stuck with me. He always had a way with words, and I loved how he phrased that. How dare those salespeople do what we incent them to do? So I just thought it was fun.
I love it. Okay, we have a very quite heavy agenda today, and like I mentioned, today we're going to talk about 7 secrets that bank managers need to know to become a trusted advisor for small business in 2020. So I guess maybe Bobby, let's start with the first one. You said what would be the first one that the first secret that they need to know?
I think one of the most important things, and you kind of gather this from my story, is that people who become trusted advisors, particular bankers, they understand and are aligned with the small business owners' sort of like needs and objectives. There's 2 pieces to that secret. The first is understand that small business owner's needs and objectives. And then the second piece is being aligned to that small business owner's objectives. So the first piece is asking, and it sounds so obvious, but it's so true. If people come in and skip over the most important thing. So I think every banker who's meeting with a small, medium-sized business owner should ask him or her, please talk to me about what your objectives are. Big picture. What are you trying to accomplish with your business? What are your business goals? What are your life goals? And how do you go about getting those goals? You listen, you learn, you remember them, you write them down, you circle them, and you always go back to those. So the next time you're meeting with them, you're able to, again, understand what those objectives are. I remember you saying when we first met that your most important objective for the business was, for example, making your customers happy. Like that's the biggest thing for you. Whatever it may be, you know what they are. But a lot of bankers, and I see it because bankers call on me as well, Michael, is that they never ask me that. So they're working in a vacuum and they don't really realize what's important. So I think that's one of the first secrets.
I have to concur with you that like so many times we went to the branch and nobody really like really even they put a big title on the business card at relationship manager. They never ask me like what are my needs, what are my objectives I want to do with my business. Nobody, not a single soul. So I really concur with you with what you're saying. So exactly, I think you mentioned earlier is that if you don't know what your client needs and objective are, you are just working in a vacuum. You just they're blind. You don't know what's going on, what their
That's
needs
right.
are.
And there's also this, you're absolutely right, but when someone is aligned with your own personal goals and objectives, and they care, and they can tell that you care about them and their objectives and what they're looking for, there's a certain mutual respect for one another that's created. But if you never ask, it never comes about in the first place. And so it just sort of resonates with me. And I think that that's just step one. It's a huge secret, but it's probably one of the most important ones. You've got to know, and to know, you've got to ask.
And I just want to take a further step like how I guess when you want to ask about the needs and the objective for bank manager, is that how deep you want to go, or like how can you make the best out of it? So next time you know that you can continue to revisit their needs and objective without being without being so nosy that you seem saying sometimes you keep asking and people feel like pressures and stuff.
Yeah, good question. I do think a lot of this is the execution on some of these ideas that I'm talking about are indeed an art form. I think everybody has their own personality and their own style. And there's a fine line between getting in there and being a bit nosy and just a little bit odd and creepy versus caring. Hey, like it's all phrasing. So, like, just how could you phrase that to not be too forthcoming? You could say, hey, if you don't mind me asking, since we're here to talk and help you with your needs, your financial needs, I was wondering if you would be willing to tell me more about some of the main objectives and needs you have for your business. I don't mind listening 10 or 15 minutes and you talking about what you're really trying to accomplish with your business. Like phrasing it like that versus just putting it right in their face. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank
It's an
you
artful
for
thing.
yeah. Thank you for answering. Like you said, you have to do it with a little finesse, if you will, a little
Yeah,
finesse. That's why you don't feel the other side doesn't feel creepy. So feel that you keep asking them interrogator.
that's right. Don't be creepy. And you could come across that way if you don't do it. And it's also timing. There could be that you just don't ask the question because it's not the right time or place, right? But
Cool.
it is the right time or place. You should ask.
Got it. So the first one is to make sure that you align with your client needs and objectives.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So,
Understand what they are and then align with them.
right.
And then align is, of course, is just not only knowing what they are, but going back to them and caring about them and making them part of you and how you serve them. Right. That's the alignment piece.
Perfect. So after we got the big picture things and that comes to the next step, the next secret, what would be the next one?
Yeah. The next secret to me to being a true trusted advisor as a banker it's pretty simple, but it's important. It's being value added. And what that kind of means is I actually wrote it down is someone who's value added is someone whose advice and ideas you respect enough to invest time and money into having them around more than just buying the product itself. And let's face it, banking is a commodity. It's a commodity type business. Therefore, you got to remember when you're talking to a business owner, you're basically not only selling them a product that costs money or a sacrifice, but you're taking away their time. Someone who's value added maximizes the time for that business owner. And what I mean by that is they are willing to provide insight and ideas that the business owner haven't thought of, that we're going to actually talk about more in a second. But that's what being value added is, to my mind.
Can you share with the audience several examples of the level of resourcefulness, and so that can show that you are adding value to the business instead of taking away the time?
Yeah. So, when I was a banker, I worked with a guy, his name was Will Brawley, and he was a treasury management officer. He was young, but he was really good. And I used to say he made me look good because he could sell so much. I would just take him to as many calls as possible. What made him such a good salesperson? Well, he was value added. So let me give you an example. Before he would go meet with them, he would pull up every statistic or every data point he could possibly think of for that particular business about their treasury management activity. Then he would go in with a pen and paper or a whiteboard and start explaining how money is flowing through that organization and how that organization, from a banking perspective, could optimize the situation. And he had his go-to ideas. Sometimes he would use the same ideas for all small business owners, but they were all valuable. But he was able to apply those ideas to their situation based on their exact statistics, their data. And what I'm talking about is the number of checks they wrote, how many, what the amount of those checks was. Then he would go into the details about how much money they would receive, who they would receive it from, how they would receive it, all with data. And so basically he busted his rear end to come up with fresh ideas. So a big part of that, being value added, is doing way more than the average bear. I should say average banker. Most bankers come in with the straightforward information. He always had way more information. So that's just one example. There are many, many others.
So you're saying is that what he did was that he came up with a list of ideas, and does it come with the implementation plan as well, or just pure idea for the client that he's going to meet with?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely came with the implementation, because that's what he would do, is come in and say, and by the way, a lot of you guys think, oh, he was just selling treasury management products, but really it was way more than treasury management. It was way more than that, because a lot of the ideas that he offered, quite frankly, were ideas that could just be implemented with no fees attached to them. These would be ways that the business could improve without any incremental banking business. So he wasn't trying to sell them. He was just trying to help them. And I guess I should have said that up front about what he was doing, but he was helping that small business owner. That's what he was doing.
I think what you just said is sort of providing idea is just very key point, because I remember once that there's a guy sort of cold called me, but when he come up with a list of a list of ideas, he got my attention immediately.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Michael, you can do X, Y, and Z, and when I remember that when he just talked about the third idea, like, he got my attention. Okay, dude, keep talking. I'm writing down.
Right. Absolutely. And it's so true. And it's kind of like, I just feel like value-added advisors take their jobs very seriously. And so that's a big part of it, is that they take what they're doing like with the utmost passion for what they do and how they do it. And that's part of the reason they become value-added, because they care so much. They're not going through the motions. They're doing the opposite.
Now, this one, so you're saying is that for managers that take their job very seriously, I want to ask you, pause a little bit and ask you this, like, what is the process in place so that bank can really find people who are really dedicated and committed to the excellence of their job? Like, really, in this case, take the job very seriously, because people, they got lower pay, they got lots of things on the plate and understaffed and things like that. So tell me about your go around how to. I guess it's all about the bank leadership. But what would you say or tell them to motivate? Um, uh, I guess what would the bank leadership needs to do in order to motivate their line manager or their manager in order to become motivated and take their job seriously?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. You know what it kind of reminds me of? By the way, to answer your question, I think it's two things. It's obviously who you hire for the team, which is a big part of it, and then how you motivate. And it reminds me of, see, I'm an NC State fan, so I love the NC State Wolfpack. They're my favorite team here in Raleigh. But our
Mm,
biggest competitor is UNC Chapel Hill, the Tar Heels.
mm,
When UNC hired Roy Williams, the head coach, I'll never forget it because I was just happy to be watching his press conference. It's like when he decided to leave Kansas and go to UNC. And I'll never get it. He said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to hire people who can run, who are really athletic and really fast. And I thought, you know what? We're screwed. I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I wanted to hear. Because you know why? Partly because that's pretty intimidating, but partly because he had a plan. So he knew what type of person he wanted in place at UNC basketball. And so I would say a bank, like what would a bank do? The same thing. They would hire people, for example, with an extreme amount of enthusiasm. So when they're interviewing dozens of candidates, they're looking for people who are really enthusiastic, who have a lot of energy. And that's the attribute they're looking for because that's contagious. And so once you get people who are excited and motivated, then they're going to spread that to other people, just like Will Brawley did. So how do you execute against that? You've got to get a team who's willing to rally around something. Now, I use the example of high energy and passion. Maybe another bank manager who's listening to this right now has some other attribute. But I think where banks sometimes end up with weak to medium candidates is they don't have a specific thing they're after. They're actually just anybody who seems like they might be good. That will get you medium, mediocre. But if you go for certain attributes and you hire for those attributes, you have a much higher chance of success. Because Will Brawley, he was quite young and not real hot paid. He probably doesn't like me talking about him here on Facebook Live, but yeah.
all right. I love it. High for attitude. I guess that's one of the way that I could have put it in high. So so you not only need to hire for talent, but also hire them for attitude as well, so that
That's right.
they can commit to do the job. Okay, so we've been touching base on on the facts that the bank manager need to be value added, need to be resourceful, come up with ideas to help their client, but also need to take their job seriously. And so all of those two really lead me up to what is the next secret besides the value added and taking the job seriously.
Yeah, and by the way, I didn't tell you, but we've done three because number three is that they take their job seriously. So just to recap, the first three secrets to being a banker, becoming a trusted added advisor, in my opinion. The first is that they're understanding they're aligned with the client's needs and objectives. The second is their value added. And the third is they take their jobs very seriously. And
Yeah.
those are the first three secrets to my mind.
Now, for audience who are watching the live feed, as you can see, there's I put some. You can see what's going on the screen, and if you've got any questions, impromptu questions, feel free to send it to my way, and definitely Bobby would love to answer all of your questions. And if he did not know, he would be resourceful enough to find out the answer for you and send it to your way.
Absolutely. You got it.
All right. So, what is the next one, Bobby?
So number four, the fourth secret is that they have industry niches.
Industry niches.
Industry niches.
They need to be well versed in some particular niche. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Too many bankers, a majority of bankers out there are complete generalists. Now, I do admit that bankers, to some degree, 70% of their job or whatever, needs to be a generalist for all types of small to medium-sized businesses. This is indeed true. However, the best bankers, to my mind, have two, three, four industries that they're experts in.
Can you share with the audience what are some of the indicators or some of the give me the example of I guess the describe experience of when you work with the best bankers.
Yeah, so the best bankers, A, are many of the first three things we talked about. Mm-hmm. B, they're dialed in to the needs of that particular business and can help that business with other types of businesses. For example, maybe they can help them find deals or help them find customers as well. But the big thing is if you're an industry expert and you're a really good banker, it means that you've met with so many different dentists. And by the way, I use the term dentist. That is the most popular niche. So many bankers are already experts in dentistry that you really, if you're smart, you would pick a different industry like engineering. CPA firms is another one that's really popular, therefore hyper competitive. But if you can get niches like machine shops, chiropractors, restaurants, specialty real estate companies like mobile home parks, where there's like a certain number of locations in a particular town. So what you do is, like First Research has a list as one of our many offerings. We have a list of like within a city, all the industries and the number of companies that exist for that particular industry. So let's say it's funeral homes, for example. You say, okay, there are 20 different funeral homes in this particular city. I'm going to become an expert in that industry, get dialed in with that industry, and therefore be an expert in helping them financially. So that I've got ideas from other funeral homes, for example, that I can apply to their competitors that aren't, secret or confidential. So that's just one example. But, I see it every day that the best bankers have niches and then they get market share with those niches. Whatever it is, engineering is a great one. Architectural firms is another one, furniture stores, auto dealerships, you name it.
So, okay, so let's say, I guess that leads me to the next question is that how competent should they be in order to to become a level of like really dialing in into the niches that you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. That's a great question. So here's how they formulate their competence. To answer your question, they become experts, like they know a lot about the industry. How do they do that? Number one, they select the right industry or industries. And they pick those industries based on the formulas I talked about before. Once they do that, then they do extensive industry research and financial research before they go call on the first one, establishing themselves an expert. Then go meet with this particular business owner and then ask them a ton of questions that are relevant to their business and their type of industry to learn even more. And then that knowledge builds more and more and more. And then, of course, the other thing they do is get involved in the associations. They go to some of the meetings where all the, business owners for that particular industry come together, like trade shows and that type of thing is key. They subscribe to the trade journals for that industry, whether maybe it's veterinarian or whatever it is. And it really works well. I mean, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with a bank called Live Oak Bank.
I do.
You know Live Oak Bank?
I know Live Oak Bank, yeah.
The bank has been extremely successful. They're coincidentally out of Wilmington, North Carolina. But they started the bank for veterinarians. Let's start a bank for veterinarians, only exclusive veterinarians. They've since added probably about 15 other industry niches, but their bankers become experts. So they only do a particular industry and they do that industry all over the country. But the point is they have 20, 30% loan growth every year. So it's been, you should look up their, or your listeners should look up their information on Live Oak Bank. I think it's liveoakbank.com.
.com.
But you can see that they do lots of specific knowledge webinars. Like, they might do a webinar for 30 minutes on how veterinarians could improve their financial situation. Well, a banker in a particular town like Kansas City or wherever they are, they could do the same thing for local businesses, local niches. And they should do that because it's a way to gain momentum.
I love it. I love the idea that the case study that you mentioned about Liveoak, because they're so well versed and they can speak the language of their prospects, and immediately you can gain trust. I think that's the grinding part I try to understand, that if the banker know that so well, how come they don't take any action for that? That's puzzling.
I know, because it's their greatest asset. It's right there at their fingertips. It's right there in the palm of their hand. They need to leverage it because they have financial knowledge that small businesses don't have. The key is being able to apply it in a systematic, thoughtful, scalable way. And the way to do that is pick industry niches so you can add even more value and get repetitive for them and build momentum that way.
I love it. I love it. And like I guess at this point maybe do a shameless plug to Bobby's company at Vertical IQ, that I had a chance to check out his website, and it was amazing. And it was able to show so many different I guess point of interest about that industries from I guess let Bobby talk about it real quick, and because he can describe it that much better than I do. So Bobby, when they use a little bit of vertical IQ, how how quick turnaround that they can become industry insightful. They become insightful about the industry to help the client.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mentioned Vertical IQ. It's a platform that has hundreds of industries on it from a banker's perspective. They're written for bankers so that banker can become smart on an industry very quickly. And so that works really well for the generalist. For that 70% of their time, they're saying, okay, I've got a meeting with a dry cleaner and I need to become an expert very quickly, 20 minutes on dry cleaning. Financially, what the trends are, what the business challenges are, so that I can be a value-added advisor. They can do that. However, if they want to spend 3 hours and become an industry expert in dry cleaning, for example, with Vertical IQ, they can do that as well. But we even provide the questions they should ask a dry cleaner to be thoughtful. And so it's all laid out. There's news articles, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's sort of Vertical IQ in a nutshell.
Awesome. We'll definitely get into more insight about that. So Bobby, besides being well versed in industry niches, what would you suggest for the next secret that manager needs to pay attention to?
Yes. So I guess this is number 5. Is the secret number 5 to be a trusted advisor is they artfully, which I've used before, help business owners consider alternative ideas. Okay. So they help them consider alternative ideas. Now, what that means is kind of like, okay, what does that mean? That means a business owner is getting ready to do something big, like buy a building, buy a piece of equipment, hire an employee, get a line of credit, sell their business, transition their business to their son or daughter or another family member. Whatever the big decision is, the banker should be someone who helps them consider alternative ideas. Like, for example, here at Vertical IQ, we have a management team. We have like really smart people I'm lucky enough to work with. Every time I bring something up, which is some idea about something big I want to do, they force me and the company and all of us to consider other options, which is exactly what I want them to do. And you hire people smarter than you. That's what a small business owner wants out of their banker. So that the banker says, have you thought about, have you considered not buying a building and instead maybe leasing a bigger building, whatever it is. But if nothing else, those alternative ideas turn into important conversations. And those important conversations build trust. And they end up with the banker being invaluable, quite frankly. Because think about a small business owner, when he or she wants to have an in-depth conversation about something they really care about, that's really important, most likely they're going to have to pay a lawyer or a CPA a lot of money to have that.
Mm-hmm. That's totally true. Very true. Yeah.
And that's true. And a banker can have that conversation for free, but he or she must be smart and articulate and trained and care and all the other secrets I've given up front to earn the right. So the small business owner listens to the alternative ideas or considers alternative ideas. Yeah.
I don't think those, I have never seen it in the job description for bankers having those kind of descriptions that you just talk about, from being resourceful, obviously help clients consider alternative ideas. It's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to find that kind of person, that kind of bankers.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think that there are, if you really look at the banking industry as a whole, to your point that you just made, is that the banking industry is being slowly disrupted. And, you see this every day. There are so many fintech startups. I mean, I just read in American Banker, there are like 5 banks starting that are clearly internet banks, but they're targeting small business owners specifically. One of them is like Wise. I think it's wise.us, but there are 4 or 5 others. But the point is that small business owners either want to do business with a bank like that, it's really easy to do business with, seamless right on the internet with high rates and low overhead and all the things they want to do, or they want their time back, or they want advice. So I believe the survivors, the banks that survive in the future, are going to be ones with really smart people who can give advice to small businesses, small, medium-sized businesses to make them successful. Otherwise, they really don't have a place. You can't afford to pay somebody $100,000 a year to just take orders. Wise.us can take orders. So the banker of the future has to be quite sharp.
What's the name of the bank? Is it WISE, wise.us, right?
Wise.us. So WISE.US.
Okay, yeah. So wise.us, that's really, I have to check it out. So, and then at the same time, you have to provide those ideas for free, right? You have to constantly learn, constantly update yourself, constantly retool yourself, and then provide those ideas, the trade that you mentioned earlier for free to the business owner, to your client, if you will, so that they can continue to build trust. Hey, Bob, are you still with me? I think Bobby just, I think the live feed from Bobby just gone a little bit. So just to recap about what I and Bobby have been discussing so far. So the first secret that he mentioned about is to really align with the client needs and objectives. So that's really the first secret that we talked about. And then the second secret is to become value added. So you really have a mindset of going to the meeting every single day with your client and become resourceful with all of that. And the third one we talk about is that they take the job very seriously. Hey, Bobby, I just sort of recap what we just mentioned about while your live feed is out.
Wonderful. I'm very sorry. It went blank, and I think it was probably my fault. It's always my fault with technology, and I think I dropped the
No,
ball. My apologies, but I'm back. So
no problem, no problem. All right, so where we just left off. Let me see. All right, so we talk about that the bank manager will need to constantly learn and retool themselves to provide those ideas, those the consultation for free to the client in order to build trust. Is that?
that's right. That's right. Exactly. And that's absolutely key. And it is the future for bankers who meet with small and medium sized business owners in person.
So you can
I
definitely
mean,
predict that that's the future of the banking
we should
industry.
see this. Yes,
So instead of going become generic, you need to really focus on a particular niche, and then just scale it up to more and more of your frontline manager to really be knowledgeable about some niche, and that's how you will sort of follow the light oak business models, and because it and start to grow from there.
absolutely. That's how I see it.
Got it. Okay, let's talk to the next one. What would be your suggestion for the next secret?
Yeah. So the next secret is that they have a strategic mindset.
Strategic mindset.
A strategic mindset. And so, I mean, so listen, when I had the idea to get in the industry research business, we had a customer that was in the steel industry, and it was a really big customer. And the CEO's name was Mark. Well, anyway, his name was Mark. And I remember exactly where I was. We were asking Mark what made a competitive banker a really good banker, because his name was Sam Catlett. That was his name. What makes Sam such a good banker was the question we had for Mark. And he said that, well, he's smart and he knows a lot about steel. But what stood out there is he's smart. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. Smart. And it goes back to a strategic mindset, because to my mind, someone who's smart in the business world has a mindset that is valuable. It's strategic in the sense that they think about the consequences of change. So they know they're able to add value by giving, I mentioned alternative ideas. Mm-hmm. So there's alternative ideas. But in addition to that, they can also offer alternative ideas. So they don't only ask the question, have you considered, but they also say, what I've found other businesses like yours doing is this, this, and this. So they're able to learn from all these small and medium-sized businesses and then apply them strategically to other businesses. And that, to my mind, makes for a trusted advisor as a banker. It's someone who can think about those things.
So let me just recap. So what you're saying is that besides aiding or helping business owners with alternative ideas,
yeah,
the banker will also need to be strategic about the ideas by saying that according to what other successful business model out there, you could have applied X, Y, and Z. Is that what I'm getting at?
That's right. And it's like, when I think of like strategy, I kind of think of like 5 different things. It's kind of like, competitors, customers. I mean, this is from the small business perspective.
Right.
Regulators, market trends, all those come together into a strategy, to my mind. And a small business owner who's really thoughtful and really smart is able to pull all those things together in a thoughtful way. The really good banker is able to help them do that. And they therefore have a strategic mindset. And it's absolutely key to success.
Quick question: How does vertical IQ fulfill this area of having a strategic mindset?
Well, vertical IQ is quite helpful because within our industry profiles, for example, and I mentioned like dry cleaning, is that within there, all those types of things that I was talking about, customers, competitors, regulation, how that affects the industry and how they have to act because of that, all those things and more, we talk about those from the perspective of various industries. Like I mentioned, it could be manufacturing, it could be machine shops, it could be anything, painters, HVAC companies, plumbers, whatever it is, to have a well-roundedness about each one of those pieces to the puzzle or the equation, if you will, and have knowledge about each one, then you're able to pull it all together. So we have a lot of that type of content put together.
Got it. So you got the content ready, you got all of the knowledge ready, and the next step is that it depends on the banker, depends on the consumer, or it depends on the one who consumes your knowledge to really connect the dots with each other to become strategic about their advice.
That's right. I mean, think about it. Like, how many small business owners get the opportunity to have someone who will sit down with them for half an hour or longer and have a real conversation about their business and where it's headed from a big picture perspective, from a strategic perspective? They don't get that opportunity because it's tiring. It takes a lot of effort. For example, are you going to try to double the number of your employees? Are you going to try to increase the number of employees by this much? And when it comes to customers, if you're trying to grow, how are you trying to grow? How are you getting customers? Are there alternative ways to getting customers? Have you considered that kind of thing? To have a strategic mindset requires the exhaustion of listening. And of course, I've turned this into a conversation, or the banker and the small business owner into a conversation, when really the banker's supposed to be doing most of the listening. They're asking questions and listening, and that leads to that trusted advisor status.
Totally agree. Okay, we're getting to the final one. I guess save the best for last. I think was Bobby. What's the last one, sir?
The last one is drum roll, please.
Rumble.
Is it they give more than they take?
Give more than they take.
They give more than they take. And so what I mean by that is, which best explained again through another story from my banking days in the 90s. So I went on a call to a company we've been going after for a long time. And at the time, I worked for a company, a bank, Nations Bank. And the CEO is a guy named Hugh McCall. And Hugh McCall is this really big personality. He's got this big Southern drawl. But Hugh McCall has a brother, and his name's Jim McCall. Okay. Jim McCall, right? Hugh and Jim McCall. Jim McCall was an extraordinary salesperson. I mean, he's the greatest salesperson I've ever seen. And he had that reputation. So they always sent him to, he said, every now and then he'd say, hey, I'm going to come to your city, your town, and if you want me to set me up with some businesses, do so. So I did. I tried to fill his calendar. And we went out there, for example, we went to this specialty chemical company. I'll never forget it. I didn't know really what to expect. But the CEO of the chemical company was named Frank Hamilton. He goes, Frank, this is Jim McCall, the banker. It's really good salesperson. Asks us, Frank, let me ask you a question. Who are the top 5 companies that you're not doing business with that you want to do business with? Can you tell me who they are? And he says, yeah, I absolutely can. And he goes, all right, who are those companies? So Frank scampered off and came back with a list. And he goes, these are the companies that I would love to do business with. And Jim said, well, Frank, if I can help you get business with these companies, like real business, would you consider working with us? Would you consider doing business with us? You don't have to, but would you consider it? Frank was like, yeah, absolutely. And then Jim McCall gets in his car, gets in our car. And this is when cell phones were like flip phones at best. And he starts calling all over the place to find out where these companies are, where they're headquartered. Do we know their CEO? And he works his tail off to get appointments between the CEOs of these companies and the specialty chemical company that we were calling on, Frank Hamilton. And they were bigger companies than he was. So he actually made it happen. It was incredible. But what Jim McCall did was gave Frank way more than he took. And that, if all of these go back to that tomorrow, Let me tell you an example. The opposite, which is not really a story, but the opposite would be you come in, you're a banker, you set an appointment, and you hang around for an hour and talk about really nothing. Oh, our bank started 100 years ago. Did you see the game last night? Shooting the bull. Can I have a quick tour of your factory? That's taking more than you receive. And you want to do the opposite. You want to give more than you take. And so I think that's the most important thing you could do. If every time you go in a meeting with a small or medium-sized business owner, you say, how can I give this business owner more than I take today? You will be a way better banker than most of your competitors, because they tend to take time away from people and not give them anything back, or try to sell them something they don't need. And so I think that's absolutely key to success.
I totally agree with you that I love the story. By the way, that's a really awesome story. So in your case, that you are giving by connecting your prospective client business with his prospects so that they can do business together. And there are multiple formats or multiple ways that you can give. If you don't have that kind of connection, you can give by, hey, maybe to bring with them a book, or having like a white papers. If you can help them with maybe some knowledge, white papers, anything that could help them one step closer to the goal. I think that could also be considered as giving away, right?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Michael, because that example was just one example.
Right.
Obviously, there are multiple ways. Like, for example, I always thought smart bankers is that they're able to, they get the financials of the small business owner, which happens a lot. Usually small business owners will provide a banker their financial statements. But the really good bankers do two things with those financial statements. Number one, they will spread them so that they can see their financial statements using software where they can create ratios with it and that kind of thing, and see them all
in one place.
One place. The other thing they do is they will compare the key statistics, the key financial statistics with the industry as a whole. So I mentioned machine shops. It's interesting. The average machine shop, per my research, has a current ratio of 1.3, but your current ratio is 2.0. Why do you have a much stronger current ratio than the average machine shop? And does that work to your advantage or to your disadvantage? Here are two ways that I think it works to your advantage. Here are two ways I think it works to your disadvantage, whatever it may be. And so that would be another example, always, because bankers are knowledgeable about finance, and they should apply that to give more than they take. And that's free advice to the small business owner.
I think bankers just underestimate how powerful they are, because they have, like you said, they have all of the financial numbers from the business owners, and that's really powerful.
I know, no one else gets that.
Nobody else gets that, right? Exactly. Even maybe beside the bank, and then maybe the CPA, right? But if you got their financial information in place, and you can, like you said, put everything in the software and have it calculate all of the ratios, and then from the ratio you can work backward on the strategies, on all the different tactics and strategy and things like that. It's really powerful.
It's an easy way for them to add value, right? Easy way. And the banker should take advantage of it every time they get a chance, to my mind.
Got it. So, Bobby, we've been talking about, 7 secrets on how to help bank managers to become trusted advisors. So I guess let me do a quick recap and see if you get it right. So the first one is to align with your client needs and objectives. And the second one is to become value added, really become resourceful, if you will, come up with ideas to help your client. And number 3 is to take that job very seriously. And number 4, to become well versed in the industry niches, right? And number 5 is they artfully help clients consider alternative ideas. And Next one is to they have a strategic mindset, and last one is to give more than they take.
Yeah, you nailed it. You're a good listener, Michael.
Oh, thank you. That's my job.
That's right.
So
you do many of these very well.
so Bobby, if you have one challenge to my audience, what would that be? One challenge for, I guess, in 2020, we are just a couple of weeks away from the 2020. What would be the number one challenge to them, and really what are some of the key takeaway, or some of the solution for them to become to get closer to that challenge, to really achieve the challenge that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think that the big thing to my mind is that I feel like the things that I talked about are doable. They're no brainers for banks, but I would challenge bank organizations as a whole to take the necessary steps to make this mindset of being a trusted advisor, being a really outstanding relationship manager to small and medium-sized businesses, to really go for it and to set up processes and systems that enable these things to take place. You can't just hope for these things to happen. It's it takes a concerted effort to do it. And the types of things you have to do, to my mind, is training. You make it requirement for your people to do these things. You make it fun. You do it with a smile on your face. You go for it 100% with gusto. You do it yourself when you're a leader, and you make it happen. Because I see every day that the banks who do these things and the bankers who execute this way are way more successful, and they have a lot more fun on their job. So my challenge to the listeners and my challenge to banks out there is to make it happen in 2020, would be my advice. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's more fun to do it. It's more fun to win.
Totally agree with you. For anyone who are interested in learning about how vertical IQ solution can help them to become trusted advisors, do you have any word for them?
Sure. Oh, we would love to chat with any organization who would like to learn more. We are easy to get along with, amicable and laid back in our sales process. They can simply contact me. My name is Bobby Martin, as a reminder. And if they're interested in vertical IQ, they can email me at bmartin@verticaliq.com, or contact us on info, or request a demo. It'll happen. And our phone number is 919-787-4600 if they'd like to contact us via phone as well. But we'd love to chat anytime.
Bobby, thank you so much for being so generous with your times and your expertise. And those are really spot on secrets and observations that I even myself took some notes over here. That's really awesome. And thanks again for your expertise.
Good. Well, thanks for having me on, and sorry about the snafu. It was my fault, but it was wonderful. Thanks for your great questions.
You're welcome. I'll chat with you soon.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.